Good morning, everyone. This is the Reverend Averill Blackburn giving you my Easter sermon. I thought I'd begin with a bit of deconstruction of the text like I usually do. We are looking at the Gospel of Matthew, Matthew chapter 28, verses 1 through 10. After the Sabbath. Sabbath in the Jewish religion is Saturday. So Matthew, or the writer of Matthew, is placing exactly when this is happening, after the Sabbath. The Sabbath would have ended at sundown on Saturday, so it's sometime shortly after that, or as we know as Christians, Sunday morning. This is then reaffirmed as the first day of the week was dawning. The first day of the week would have been Sunday because the week is beginning after the Sabbath. After the Sabbath, as the first day of the week was dawning, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to see the tomb. Let's just remind ourselves where we are right now. Jesus has been crucified. His body has been placed in a tomb. Per the rituals of first century Palestine, women and friends, usually family members, would come and anoint the body. They would wrap it. They would prepare it for death, potentially for burial. They would prepare it for what might come in the end days. Now, each gospel tells us that various different women appear. In Matthew, it's Mary Magdalene and the other Mary. The other Mary could have been any other woman in Jesus' circle named Mary or Miriam in Hebrew. It could potentially have been his mother, but usually Mary, the mother of Jesus, is referred to as Mary, the mother of Jesus, or Mary, the mother of James. So it could be anyone. The point here is that the people are named. The people are known. The people are known to the friends of Jesus who are later writing down this story. These are people who loved Jesus, people who wanted to honor him in death despite the way he was crucified, despite the way he was found guilty of high crimes. To continue, we learn that there is an earthquake, for an angel of the Lord has come. Now, if we think of first century Palestine and how it's set up, there's a rather interesting cosmology. Very simple, very to the point, but one that we have nonetheless retained in many ways throughout the centuries. Forgive the camera moving slightly. My cat is here. Yes, he's in isolation with me. To get back to the earthquake, we had a three-tiered system. In the center, we had Earth, a flat area, had Palestine in it, Rome, whatever lay beyond the sea, Babylon. Every country you can imagine, it's a flat plane of the earth. Below that would be some form of hell. Depending on which religion or country you're from, depends on what you believe. But if you go down, that's not a good thing. Definitely not. Now, when we get back to the earth, if you go directly above, you see the sky. And in the sky would be heaven. The two were basically one and the same. You look at the sky and you're looking at the edges of heaven. So with all three layers connected, they could very easily affect each other. So if an angel of the Lord is descending from heaven, you can imagine this could create shock waves. And these shock waves potentially could affect the earth and turn into earthquakes. So when we see that in a passage such as this, there is an earthquake because of something that happened in heaven, the author is not necessarily saying that there is an actual physical earthquake, although he very much would have believed that. He's saying that something so great in heaven is happening, something so earth-shattering, that it affects this physical plane physically. The writer of the Gospel of Matthew continues, saying that he came back and rolled back the stone and sat on it. Jesus was in a tomb. At this time, many tombs, the nicer tombs, were actually caves with stones in front of them to protect them from grave robbers and to also make sure that the body was protected in death from anything on the outside, such as sandstorms or regular storms, that sort of thing. If we think about other Near Eastern ancient civilizations, we can think of the tombs for the pharaohs in Egypt. They basically are the same idea. Yes, they are constructed by men, beautiful pieces of architecture, but they're stone or rock. They're meant to contain, and they're meant for people not to be able to get in or get out. Before pharaohs began to construct the Great Pyramids, many rulers of ancient Egypt were actually buried in caves similar to the one we have described here in the Gospel of Matthew. To continue. Speaking of the angel, his appearance was like lightning, and his clothing white as snow. I've always liked that description, personally. Lightning is bright. It shocks. In a dark landscape filled with storm clouds, all of a sudden, a flash of light, everything is almost completely white, and then it's gone again. So for the angel to have an appearance like lightning, it's quick, it's fast, it's bright, it's shocking, it's wonderful, it's full of majesty. It's something that your basic average human being would not be. For the angel to have clothing white as snow is also a beautiful picture of the natural world. Snow is something in this time, in this location, that is almost mystical. Something you would only find in far-off lands. Something you would only find, perhaps, in the mountains. And just as quickly as it would come, beautiful, white, perfect, soft, it could disappear again. It's otherworldly. Matthew quickly moves on. He's not one to spare his words. For fear of him, the angel, the guards shook and became like dead men. This is interesting. At this point, reading the Gospel of Matthew, we, as the reader, we're not quite sure what's happening here. We know something great is happening. We know Jesus has just died. We know that the Marys are going to take care of the body. We know that there's an earthquake, so heaven's getting involved. We know there's this angel that is both like the planet with the snow and the lightning and so different. Something similar to us and yet so dissimilar. So we know we're getting the scene set. So when we have the guards, very human, most definitely Roman. So they're not Israelites, they're not Hebrews, they're not part of Jesus' people, they're not Jews. They're like dead men. Dead men. These are two healthy, breathing men trained for battle, trained for war, trained for whatever the Roman Empire could possibly find on its expansion and its occupations of various places. These strong, virile men are like dead men. They are life in Rome. And yet, here, in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 28, verse 4, they are like dead men. So we've got alive, and then dead. Keep that in mind. We turn back to the angel. But the angel said to the women, "Do not be afraid." This is a phrase that Jesus has often used in the gospel. This is a phrase, come to think of it, that the angel Gabriel says to Mary during the Annunciation. So we know this phrase as Christians. Do not be afraid. Where am I? He says, "I know that you are looking for Jesus who was crucified." Crucified. Dead. Just the verse before, live men are dead men, and now we're talking about a dead man who hasn't quite entered the scene yet, even as a body ready for burial. The angel continues, "He is not here, for he has been raised as he said." Throughout Lent, we have been hearing about how Jesus would come again, how he would rise again, how he would rise from the dead. It's something everyone was used to hearing, kind of like a catchphrase, if you will. Trying to think of a good catchphrase. All I can think of is, Monty Python, "I'm not dead yet," which is a little inappropriate right now. But you get the idea. "You're fired." That's a great catchphrase. So it's kind of been like a catchphrase for Jesus. "I'm coming again. I will rise from the dead. This will happen." His disciples and friends are probably going, "Yes, yes, Jesus, we know. We've heard it. Yes, yes. I'm fired. Moving on. You don't really mean it. Or if you do mean it, maybe you're a little delusional, unhinged, uncertain of what exactly you mean, because no one actually rises from the dead." More on that later. The angel tells the ladies to go see where Jesus was lying, and then to go quickly tell the disciples that he has been raised from the dead, and he is indeed going ahead of you to Galilee. There you will see him. This is where it gets a little strange. We know the story. Most of us grew up on the story. We know that Jesus most likely descends into hell for 3 days, comes back, is alive, preaches for 40 days and 40 nights, and then ascends into heaven. We know this. It's part of our religion. We believe it full-heartedly. And the angel's, telling us. He's reminding us. Yes, we know. Yes, angel, we know this is happening. But here's the thing. The Marys don't know this is happening. Even if they believed every single word Jesus ever said, completely and fully, down to the very bottom of their hearts, they don't really see him rising again. They think the crucifixion is the absolute end. And if it isn't the end, if there is perhaps something else in the story of Jesus, if Mary Magdalene and the other Mary believe that, if the other disciples believe that, although they doubt, including Thomas later on, this is not what they envision. They do not envision exactly if there is an empty tomb. For Jesus to go ahead into Galilee, it doesn't make sense. So we're going to go backwards a bit. Figure out exactly what this would have meant or sounded like to the two Marys. Now we know that Jesus, in his ministry, has been able to raise people from the dead, to give back life. The most famous example is, of course, Lazarus, who is dead, buried. Jesus says, "Nope, that's not the case. He's not dead." And lo and behold, Lazarus gets up and walks away, alive and lives. But let's remember exactly what Jesus said. Jesus said, "He is not dead. He is merely sleeping." So in Jesus' mind, he's not really bringing Lazarus back from the dead. He's just waking him up. He's just seeing a man he's aware of, potentially sleeping on a couch, going over to him and giving him a nudge in the shoulder. Maybe other people clearly have been trying to wake him up before, other nudges, whatnot, but he needs a little something extra. We can think of various ways to wake people up. Throw water on their faces. Push them out of bed. There are various ways. But the point is that Lazarus is not dead according to Jesus. Lazarus is asleep. It is everyone else who is merely mistaken, believing that he has died. This happens one other time in the Gospels. Jesus is led to a little girl who has died. No one can wake her up. But this girl is not dead. We see in the text that she is merely in a coma. She merely sleeps. And Jesus' miracle is not to bring her life, but to bring her consciousness. So, what does this mean? Jesus is clearly dead. He has been crucified on a cross. The Romans even checked and stabbed his side to make sure that this guy was really, really dead. The Romans also are so petrified of the idea of these rumors that Jesus is going to rise from the dead that they've stationed guards in front of his burial place, in front of his tomb, so that body thieves cannot go in and take the body and claim, he's alive. No body, no death. Now this might seem a little strange to us. Looking back, it's part of the story, but no body, he's alive. Of course, they don't have social media. You can't track people by their cell phones. You can't go on Google Maps and figure out every place a person has been. This is 2,000 years ago, after all. They don't really need proof of life at this point in history. They just need proof of not being dead, hence the guards. But what do they expect if someone lives again? What do they expect? What did they expect 2,000 years ago? Why specifically did the angel tell the two Marys that Jesus was not here, that Jesus would be in Galilee? Makes sense. That would be where he would go. He's from Galilee after all. So are his people. Jerusalem hasn't exactly been kind to him. There could be warrants out for his arrest if he is in fact not dead. But let's just look back at the history of rising from the dead. First off, there's the Old Testament and various associated writings. You don't really think that anyone lived again before Jesus or after Jesus. As Christians, we think this is the one great miracle. This happened today on Easter. Hallelujah! But it's happened before. Just to name a few names, we have Enoch in the book of Genesis. We have Ezra, Baruch, Levi, who was a priest, the great prophet Elijah. In some traditions, we have Moses, who led the people of Israel out of Egypt. And in the book of Job, the children of Job all ascend into heaven. And that's what all these people have in common. They don't just, die and then live again. They don't die at all. Instead, they're alive on this plane, this center plane, and they ascend into heaven immediately, in their bodies, complete and full. When a body goes missing in a tomb, in this culture, there are two possibilities. The first, and most likely, grave robbers. The second is that the person never died at all and ascended into heaven. Now, the Gospel of Matthew was written for the Jewish people, but the idea of ascension into heaven was not just in Jewish culture. According to tradition in the Greco-Roman world, the Emperor Augustus ascended into heaven. Romulus, the brother of Remus and the founder of Rome, the city-state itself, never died. He ascended into heaven. And according to some Greek myths, Heracles, known as Hercules in the Roman tongue, also ascended into heaven, the greatest of heroes that the world had ever seen. So when the angel says, Jesus is not here, the Marys are thinking, grave robber or heaven. Two choices. But when he says that Jesus is going ahead of you into Galilee and there you will see him, this is absolutely revolutionary. This has never happened before. Never in the history of mankind as they know it. Not in Judaism, not in the Hebrew past, not with the Greeks, not with the Romans, certainly not with the Babylonians or the Assyrians. This is new. The idea that a man who is actually dead and not sleeping, actually crucified, has been stabbed in the side in a way by the Romans that even if he had survived crucifixion, he wouldn't survive that. The idea that he is up, walking, alive, able to speak, willing to interact with his people, is just mind-blowing. No wonder, as we see in verse 8, these two women left the tomb quickly with fear and great joy and ran to tell Jesus' disciples. Of course they're afraid. Of course. This revolutionary idea, this beautiful idea, this idea that their friend, that their teacher could be back with them. There are no words. No words. Of course they were fearful. Fearful that it was not true. Fearful that they had been misled. Fearful that if it was true, what did this actually mean? And joy. Joy that they might see Jesus once again. Joy that despite the pain he went through with his crucifixion, that he was able to get up and walk again and breathe in the air of his homeland, breathe in the air of his people, and live again to try and create a better future. Of course, once they leave the tomb, they come across Jesus. And Jesus no doubt smiles at them and tells them, "Do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee. There they will see me." This is an affirmation of everything the angel has told the two Marys. This is an affirmation that the tomb is in fact empty. This is in fact an affirmation that the absolutely most unbelievable thing has happened, that Jesus is standing there in front of them. So what do we take from this morning? Jesus lives. Hallelujah. Normally, I'd be shouting that from the roof or something, outside in a church. But today, we're all alone in our individual houses, in our individual dwellings. Sometimes there seems like there's no reason to shout, hallelujah. No reason to see the impossible. We just have to remember that the impossible did happen. Jesus not only rose from the dead, but Jesus remained with us. He stayed with us here on earth physically for 40 days before he did what everyone expected him to do. Like Enoch, Baruch, Elijah, Moses, the Emperor Augustus before him, and ascended into heaven. Here's the thing. He never really left. We are his people. Whether we are the people of Israel, the people of America, the people of Europe, the people of Asia, the people of Africa, South America, Antarctica, I believe I got everywhere, Australia, the people of Australia. We are all his children. And sometimes it feels like God like Jesus has abandoned us. It feels like we're all alone, like we're suffering, as if we're going through something and we don't know what the other side of that something will be. Now, in first century Palestine, the Jews were going through something horrific. They were going through occupation. Now, of course, we know from the Old Testament that they had been occupied before. If they did not personally know what this felt like, their ancestors did, and their ancestors had written about it. Their ancestors had survived. So in first century Palestine, no matter how horrible their occupation became, no matter how much their culture was being eroded, no matter how little hope they had, they did have at least the knowledge that they had the strength to get through it. And Jesus came to give them hope then. And he has come to America, to the world now, to give us hope. We may be going through a pandemic that we do not understand, but we have been through this sort of thing before. In Europe, hundreds upon hundreds of years ago, the world was nearly wiped out by the bubonic plague. 100 years ago, the Spanish flu went through Europe and North Africa, killing most of the old and the young, including my great-uncle. We, as a people, have been through this before. It's different now. We have technology. We're built up into cities that are larger than any the world has ever seen before. We have different economic structures, so it seems different to us. It seems special to us because we personally have not lived through it. But the thing is, we have the hereditary strength to live through it again. We will see it through the other side. And it is Easter. This story reminds us that Jesus came to earth, and that even when he died, he refused to leave us. Jesus is here with us now. Perhaps not physically. He's not sitting at your dinner table. He's not standing outside your window, pasting notes. I've seen that on YouTube. It's very cute. He's not shouting at you from a nearby rooftop while everyone's looking at the skies. But he is even more present. He's in the air. He's in the ground. He's in our souls. He's in our hearts. And he's not leaving. He came again. He came again when the odds were so slim that it could not have happened, so revolutionary that no one considered how it would happen. He did not abandon us, and he will not abandon us today, tomorrow, or in the days to come. I wish you all a happy Easter. Amen.